Okay, how's it going, everybody? I hope you're all doing well. Okay, well, so in this episode, I want to try to say something about a pretty famous quote that comes from one of the seven wise men of Greece, namely Solon. So, what he said was this. He said, "Count no man happy until he be dead." Wow, so what's all that about? What's he trying to say here exactly? Well, let's just jump right into it. Okay, so let me begin with the source and the context of that quote. So what Solon says here is actually found in a story told by the Greek historian Herodotus. Now, in that story, Herodotus has the great king of Lydia, Croesus, ask Solon why it is that he shouldn't be considered to be the happiest person in the world, considering that he has all this unlimited wealth and power. And what Solon says back to him is crucial. What he says to him is that he just can't tell if the great king is happy. And that's something that he won't be able to know until he, Croesus, is dead. Well, again, so what's going on here? Why does Solon have to wait until Croesus is dead until he's able to make some sort of definitive claim about whether or not he's happy? I mean, from Croesus's point of view, I'm sure that Solon's response here is pretty crazy. After all, Croesus is living in such a way that he can do whatever he wants and do nothing but enjoy himself all day. So clearly, he should be able to rightfully claim that he's happy, even the happiest person in the world, given that he's got so much more than anybody else does. Okay, well, I think what's going on here with Solon's response is this. What's going on is that Solon is reminding Croesus of the uncertainty of life's events and of the fragility of existence in general. That is, since bad luck or ill fortune is always a possibility, it would be premature and even presumptuous to call oneself happy before one's entire life has been lived out. In particular, he's letting it be known to Croesus that Croesus's own extremely favorable circumstances could change drastically before or at the moment of his own death. And of course, not surprisingly, that turns out to be true. That's to say, it turns out that not long after, Croesus is captured by the Persian Empire and robbed of everything that he had. Okay, but notice something then. Something really important, actually. Notice that happiness for Solon has something to do with a whole life, and not just with a particular moment in time. In other words, you're only qualified to be called happy if you live out an entire life free from misfortune. And what's more, happiness for Solon doesn't seem to be just some sort of feeling either. I mean, if it were just a feeling, then clearly he ought to have called Croesus happy. Because at that moment in his life, Croesus was obviously feeling pretty good. Okay, well, unfortunately, there's not much more that we can glean from this story in Herodotus because it's pretty short. And after all, it's not a work of philosophy. It's really just something like historical mythology, which is what Herodotus is basically doing. But that said, what's really interesting is that I think that what Solon is made to say partly inspired the later Aristotle and his own view on happiness. So, in a way, you might say that Aristotle fleshes out what was only briefly hinted at by Solon. Okay, well, so what's Aristotle's view then? Well, okay, so by way of contrast, let's first of all start with us moderns. You see, I think it's pretty safe to say that for us moderns, happiness pretty much suggests a pleasant feeling or some kind of a psychological state of one sort or another. I mean, after all, we take it to be synonymous with something like feeling good or having fun, right? Consequently, for us, it's possible to speak of being happy for one moment or at one point in time, but not in another. For example, we might say something like, I was happy the night when my team qualified for the playoffs, but then I wasn't happy when they went on to lose in the first round. And a connected point is this. It's that because we take happiness to be equivalent to a feeling, to pleasure, we often think that it's something that we just can't be mistaken about. In other words, if we feel happy, then we are happy. That's that. So, I don't know, I guess maybe one way of expressing this is to say that for us moderns, happiness is entirely subjective. Okay, well, now as odd as it may sound to us, for Aristotle, happiness is not primarily a feeling. Happiness is not pleasure. No, instead, it has something to do with leading a flourishing and fulfilled or a worthwhile life. It has something to do with achieving our full potential. In this sense, happiness for Aristotle refers to the quality of a whole life and not just to particular moments in time when we feel good. Actually, it's interesting. This is why Aristotle says that children cannot be happy. And that's because if happiness is concerned with a complete life, then obviously it's not something that we can attribute to a very young person, even though that very young person may be experiencing many pleasurable moments. And more specifically, it would be premature to call a child happy when we don't really know how their life as a whole is going to turn out. After all, they may, down the road, meet with great misfortune, right? Like, I don't know, with a terrible life-threatening disease or something. Anyway, the upshot of all of this is that according to Aristotle and according to Solon before him, happiness is more like the characterization of an entire life or a condition of a person's life as a whole than it is the product of some momentary and subjective feeling or experience. This is why they both think that nobody, including Croesus, is entitled to bear the name happy before the day of their death. In other words, both of them argue that a life must be completed, or at least almost completed, before we can truly judge whether or not it has been a happy life for the person living it. And so this is what Solon means when he says that we should count no man happy until he be dead. Bye for now.